So I'd like to begin by wishing you all hello, good day. I just want to make sure you can all hear me, if you can hear me. Excellent. And so as usual, we will begin with the prayer for refuge and bodhicitta. O Sangye Chedon
Soki
Icho
Shona
Chancho Bardo Icho Sumche Dagi
Ishanyen Gipe Sono
Jola La Chancho. Okay. Sorry, we had a problem with the muting. We'll begin from this. Let's just start from the beginning again. O Sangye Chedan Sogi Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dani Chabsum Je Dage Chenyen Gibe Sanam Gi Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chedan Soye Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dane Chabsum She Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sunam Ji Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chedan Soye Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chapsum Che Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sunam Ji Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Semje tamje dewa dan dewe judan demrar juje donga dan donga ji judan rawa juje donga mebe dewa tamba tam min rawa juje yerin chada nidan rawa danyon chambola nebra juje. May all sentient beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the highest joy, free of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or hatred to those near or far. Now think to your... in the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And now think to yourself about your motivation. With anything we do, the primary thing is motivation. Whether it turns out good or badly, On an exterior level, there are many causes and conditions for why something might turn out well and turn out badly, but internally, in terms of your karma and particularly, it really depends upon your motivation most of all. So, I mean, when we're studying the Abhidharma, if we have a good motivation when we learn everything well, that's an excellent result. If you have a bad motivation or a motivation that's tainted, most of us wouldn't have a bad motivation, I don't think, but our motivations might be slightly tainted. And if you have a tainted motivation and end up and study, you may learn all of the words, but understanding the meaning will be difficult. Actually having a good result is difficult because it's really about affecting yourselves. And so having a good motivation is like the first step on that. So it's important to think about our motivation. If you have a good motivation, and after the end of weeks of listening to the Abhidharma, it's still like, oh no, what is all of this? How can I do this? And you feel like you aren't learning anything. You actually are still doing well because you have a good motivation to begin with. So the measure of whether or not you are learning the Abhidharma, whether or not you're learning the lessons to be learned now, are not a question of can you list the 98 types of kernels according to the Great Exposition? And do you get extra credit if you can list the 120 according to other schools? That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that you take a step from where you are. And when it's the first time through the Abhidharma, as I think it is for many of you, it's difficult to really get it completely the first time through. It takes years, actually. It takes many times through. So if you go through at the beginning and you feel to yourself, oh my, this is like more. I mean, because this is not the style, this is not a sort of teaching that is readily available in English. And so if you want to get the sort of teaching, and there just aren't so many opportunities, it's going to be on a different level than you're used to. And as a result, you might feel to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't cope. But you shouldn't worry about that. Instead, you should keep studying and learn what you can and think about it as you can. And if your motivation is good, even if on the outside you end up after the end of this chapter not able to recite even the 6 kernels, let alone the 98, on the outside that doesn't look so good. On the inside is what is important. So what's critical for that is a good motivation. So when we listen to the Dharma and when we teach the Dharma, it's for both of us. When we're teaching and listening to the Dharma, it's important for us to have a really good motivation of wanting to make sure that what is our aim? And the best aim is that we want to free all beings from suffering, ourselves and all beings. Our own suffering is intolerable. And so if our suffering is intolerable, then all other beings' suffering is intolerable as well. And if suffering is intolerable, then we need to do something about it. And the only way that we can really truly free ourselves from lasting suffering is to reach the state that in Buddhism we call Buddhahood. It may be similar to states reached in other religions or not. That's not the question. But we want to reach the state where there is just no more ignorance that would cause any suffering, even the mildest discomfort, so that we can reach a permanent state of happiness. And if we want to do that for ourselves, we also need to do it for others, partially because we need to help others along the path if we're going to get to the state of Buddhahood. And partially because it just wouldn't be fair. It'd be like winning the lottery and then putting all the money in your own investment account and not sharing it with anyone. Right? That wouldn't do anyone any good. So if you want to actually have something good come of this, it's best to have that motivation of bodhicitta. Realistically, actually, it's difficult, though, for us to have a good motivation of bodhicitta, often when we don't even really know what bodhicitta is. And that's kind of a topic of a different teaching. But even if you just have the wish to liberate yourself and you're not uncertain about liberating others, then that also is a good motivation. It's beneficial. But even truly having a wish for really thinking to yourself, I want to liberate myself from samsara, this is actually pretty rare, even among people who have been practicing Dharma for a long time. And so if at least you have the motivation of, I want to move in that direction. I want to be a better person. I want to move in the direction of actually finally really being able to practice Dharma just a little bit. And that is also a good motivation. So, but you need to take your motivation, and you did have the idea, I'd like to stretch it. So you start where you are, and then you try to do more. Do what you can, do as much as you can. And you often find that you're able to do more than you think you are. But it starts from the motivation. So please listen to these teachings this morning with this good motivation. The motivation of bodhicitta is best, or the aspiring to it. We're aspiring to have aspirational bodhicitta, or whichever sort of aspiration you have. And then the Dharma that we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his commentary, Youthful Play. And of the 8 chapters, we are talking about the 5th, the teachings on the kernels. And this is teaching, the chapter that is often considered one of the more important chapters in the book. The one that is the most famous, and I think the most popular, is the 3rd chapter on teachings on the world, because everyone wants to know about continents and islands and things like that. But the one that is most important, if we want to achieve liberation, what's most important? We need to know, what do we need to overcome in order to reach liberation? And that is the afflictions, or the kernels. So this is why this chapter is so important. This chapter has 3 parts. The first part is the part that actually discusses the kernels themselves. The first part is the nature of the kernels. The second part is what abandons or discards the kernels. In other words, what type of wisdom discards the kernels. And then the third part is what is the result of discarding the kernels. So the first section is generally considered like the description of the truth of origin. The truth of origin has 2 parts, karma and afflictions. So karma was discussed in chapter 4. So here we are talking about the truth of origin. And this is the afflictions. And so this is the part that we are discussing now. This section has 2 parts. It has a presentation of the kernels as the root of existence, and also a section on the understanding of kernels. And that has sections on classifications of the kernels, how the kernels arise, and then enumerations of the kernels. And so of these 3, we are still speaking about the first, the classifications of the kernels. Wait a minute. Now I'm trying to remember exactly where did we get. Which kernels tie one down in the 3 times? Discarded yet possessed. So we are still in the section on the classifications of the kernels. They're the classifications of the essence, the classifications of the aspects, and the classifications of what has which kernels. And so in this, we are speaking about the third of these, which kernels tie us down in the 3 times. And so in this, no, that part we have finished. No, we are talking about what dharmas are the objects of which cognitions. I'm sorry, it's difficult. So we are the heading is on the bottom of page 407 of the book. So what dharmas are the objects of which cognitions? And here, this has two topics. Which cognitions focus on the 5 dharmas of each of the 3 realms, and which cognitions focus on the undefiled. So here we are in this paragraph here that I'm highlighting at the moment. So the section of the which kernels tie you down, the which dharmas are the objects of which cognition. There are 2 topics. Which cognitions focus on the 5 dharmas of each of the 3 realms, and which cognitions focus on the undefiled. So here, when we're talking about how the afflictions tie us to objects in the 3 realms, like my stupid analogy of the chocolate oblivion truffle tort. So what objects can which cognitions or can which afflictions tie you down to? That's the question that we're talking about. And so the problem here is that actually, if you take a look at it on a broad level, it's infinite, because there's an infinite number of objects, and there are 98 different kernels. And so if you have 98 times infinity, it's even worse than just one infinity, at least we think. Actually, infinity is just infinite. You just can't do it. And so in order to make it easy to understand, we kind of group the different afflictions and the different afflictions and the objects that you're seeing into 16 different classes. And so these are the 5 dharmas of each of the 3 realms in which cognitions focus on the undefiled. So the first of these, the first section, is which cognitions focus on the 5 dharmas of each of the 3 realms. In other words, which objects in the 3 realms can the different cognitions relate to? So the first has 2 topics, which cognitions focus on the first 2 discards of seeing and the discards of meditation, and which cognitions focus on the discards of seeing, cessation, and the path. So here we are, we're in the section in which discards focus on the 2 discards of seeing and the discards of meditation. So this has 3 points. And the first is which cognitions focus on those of the level of desire. So that's the topic, that's the outline. But before we get too far into that outline, into the actual topic, we need to think about, well, what are these 16 classes? Because we have to have an idea, right? We've talked about like discards of seeing and discards of meditation. So with the discards of seeing, what do we have? Well, we've got 4 for each of the 3 realms, right? We've got the 4 for desire realm, the 4 for form realm, and the 4 for because of formless realm, right? That's in general, right? And then there are the meditation discards. That's like a bunch. But so that would be, so what is that? So how do we come up with 16 in general? So I just wanted to make it a little bit easier to see this this morning. And so here we go. That's the chant. That's what we're talking. The 16 categories of phenomena. So in the desire realm, what do we have in the desire realm? If we group things, of course, there are many ways you can group things in the desire realm, but if we talk about it in terms of the discards, we have this. We have 5 sets of discards in the desire realm. The discards of seeing suffering, the discards of the seeing origin, the discards of seeing cessation, the discards of seeing path, and discards of meditation for those 5, right? We've been through this a little bit when you're talking about the 15 classes of discards. So this is the same, or almost the same as the 16 classes of discards, right? At least in the desire realm. And then in the form realm, well, we can look at the form realm in the same way. Discards of seeing suffering, origin, cessation, path, and discards of meditation. So that's 5 more, so that's 10. So we've got 10 there. Well, in the formless realm, we've got the same. The discards of seeing suffering, origin, cessation, path, and meditation. So these are all the defiled phenomena. So that's 15. So how do we get to the 16th category? Well, the 16th category is this, the undefiled or stainless. So in the Abhidharma and also in other texts, when you see the word stainless, that also means the undefiled. So basically what we're talking about here is that when you have all of the classes of discards of the 3 realms, that includes all defiled phenomena because they all need to be abandoned. And then in addition to that, you also have the stainless, the undefiled. So what are the stainless? This means 2 things. It means, first of all, cessation. It means the cessation of the defilements, the cessation of the afflictions. So that's that kind of, and that's, it's like a separate phenomena or a substantial phenomena, but it's not compound, it's the cessation. It's like if you have a glass that's full of water and you pour the water out of the glass, then there is no water in the glass, right? After you've dried it, okay, there's a little water step. We won't get too picky about this. When the glass is empty, there's no water in it. That absence of water is not really anything, except it is kind of something. There's an absence there, according to the great exposition school. That absence of water. It's like the absence of the afflictions is what we call an analytic cessation. We'll get into analytic cessation more in the later parts of this chapter and especially in the 6th chapter. Oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button. So here we are. So you've got the defiled, you've got the undefiled, so it's that cessation, and it's also the truth of path. So this is something that came up in the beginning of the 1st chapter. The defiled phenomena are pretty much everything except for the truth of path. The truth of path means wisdom. The wisdom that you develop when you see the 4 noble truths and then continue on the path of meditation. So that's the truth of path. And then cessation is like the result of that wisdom, eliminating the discards. So that's what we mean by the undefiled. So everything can be subsumed within these 16 categories. So in the next section, when we're talking about the 16 categories, these are the ones that we are talking about. So here, so that is that section. I wanted to show you that because I think if you have that idea first, then when we actually talk about the text, it's going to make more sense, right? Otherwise, you're going to be like, 16, what are these 16? So now you've got an idea, right? 5 of desire, the seeing, what is it? Seeing, origin, and what's the third one? Oh, is it the undefiled? No, it's not. It's cessation, path, and the discards of seeing. Those 5 in the form realm, in the desire, and in form, and in formless, that's 15, plus the undefiled, that's 16. And that kind of, you can classify every bit of phenomena in the world in that. Chocolate, oblivion, truffle, tort is going to be a meditation discard of the desire realm, right? It's in the desire realm because we desire it. It's food and sex. That's what you desire. So it's food or sex. So so that's the particular desire of the desire realm. And so it's a meditation discard. It's something that you're looking out at. So it's a meditation discard, right? When you're thinking about me, that's primarily personality view, right? And that's in the desire realm, but there's also subtler levels of that in the form and formless realm. So that's like different. So those are how you can sort of think about all the different things. So things that are me or mine, external things, those are all in those 15 classes. Okay. So now to go back to our text. So which cognitions focus on those of the level of desire? So we had those 16 of the objects, and likewise, we also have 16 different cognitions that can focus on them, right? When you have an object, you also have the subject that knows it, right? Objects and subjects go together. So you have what do we say? We have the chocolate, oblivion, trouble tort, which is the discard of meditation on the level of desire, and you also have the mind that thinks about it. So that's another type of mind. So what types of mind can focus on things like chocolate, oblivion, truffle, tort, or whatever else you want? I'm using a stupid example, but you can substitute anything. So those of desire, discards of seeing, suffering, and cause of meditation are in the sphere of their own 3, of 1 of formless, of stainless 2. So this is another verse that's kind of hard to put together. So those of desire, that means that of those, among those 16 classes, among those that are of desire, that is the 5 realms of desire, we've got objects of the 5 discards of the 5 level of desire. We've got discards of seeing, suffering, cause, cessation, path, and meditation. These 5, right? You've got these 5. So those of desire, discards of seeing, suffering. So when you see suffering, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cause. But we're not talking about meditation. Here it looks like I'm doing some sort of odd gang sign or something, but actually I'm just kind of counting on my fingers. You've got the discards of meditation. So you've got 3, right? Discards of seeing suffering, discards of seeing cause, and discards of meditation. So those 3 classes in the desire realm, that's the objects that we're talking about, right? So the discards of seeing suffering and cause, those discards of seeing suffering would be like our personality, your idea of me. Discards of cause would be like a cognition that focuses on our anger when we see anger in ourselves or see the cause. The discards of meditation, that would be like the chocolate, oblivion, truffle, tort. Right? So those 3 categories of thing. So they're in the sphere of their own 3. So what this means is that those 3 are in the sphere of discards of seeing. They're in the sphere of the discards of seeing suffering, the discards of seeing cause, and of the discards of meditation, right? So those are the three that can focus in the desire realm, that can focus on the truth of suffering cause and the suffering and cause, and on the truth of, excuse me, on the meditation discard. So you've got those three can look at their own. So they're in the sphere of their own three. So sphere is like saying they are objects of their own three. And they're also in the sphere of one of form and of the stainless too. So the reason these things are in the sphere of the form realm is that they are the objects that are discarded in order to achieve the form realm. So when we're talking about the form realm here, we're actually talking about the preliminary meditations that get you to the form realm, not quite the actual dhyana yet. Perhaps when you're actual dhyana, you can think about them in the past as well. But we're primarily concerned about the preparations or the meditation that gets you to the jhana. And then also the stainless, that's like when you have the truth of path, that is that wisdom that is looking at the discards of the desire realm. It can look at all three of these, right? So that's the five that can look at the level of desire. So to read the commentary, in order to easily understand with few words how many kernels develop through focus the different classes of beings, this is taught in brief. So developing through focus means that the kernel looks that kernel actually observes or focuses on that thing. So you've got the kernel of desire that focuses on chocolate or Bolivian truffle torte or whatever you want to do, right? So how many kernels can focus on chocolate or Bolivian truffle torte and so forth? So when we to briefly categorize that are all dharmas that are objects and any phenomena that can be observed by any cognition, there are 5 classes of discards in each of the 3 realms plus undefiled dharmas for a total of 16 classes. So this is what we just went through a few moments ago when you have these 16 different classes. Let me see if I can get that one back up just to review it for you. So I'm not going to show it as fancily, but here you've got the 15 of discards, the discards of seeing in desire, the 5 of desire, the 5 of the form realm, and the 5 of the formless realm plus undefiled for 16. So to go back to the book, then they're the perceiving subjects. The cognitions are likewise also 16. So cognition here, when we say it's a cognition, it also includes all of the concurrences, it says. The word cognition is used as an illustration. So it means the main mind that's looking at it. That's your in the 5 aggregates, that's the aggregate of consciousness. That's just mere awareness of the object. Plus all of the concurrences means all of the mental factors that are associated with those cognitions. So that would be like the feeling, feeling, conceptions, and formations, all the different types of thoughts that you might have about the different objects. And so those also are included in those 16 categories of the subject. So we've got the objects and the subjects, and 16 of each. So among these of desire, those of desire that are discards of seeing suffering and its cause, the origin, and those which are the discards of the path or meditation, these 3 dharmas are in the sphere of 5 subjects each. So you have these 3, you have discards of seeing suffering, discards of seeing cause, and discards of seeing meditation, but not the 2 of cessation and path. So these 3, they're in the sphere of 5 subjects each, their own 3 cognitions of desire. So the discards, so the cognitions that are discards of seeing suffering, cognitions that are discards of seeing the origin, and cognitions that are discards of meditation. And they're also in the realm of one virtuous cognition, the preparation for the first jhana included within the meditation discards of the form realm, and also the consciousness that is compatible with stainless Dharma knowing. So the first one, that preparation for the first dhyana, it's a special meditation that we'll speak about later. Basically what it means is that when you are trying to achieve the dhyanas, you first learn how to do basically really powerful shamatha meditation. You've got very strong shamatha meditation that's still on the level of desire. This is called the preparations for the first jhana. And then there you follow the instructions and you go through specific meditations that eliminate the discards of meditation. And so that is the level That level of preparation can also focus actually on all of the discards of seeing and meditation as well. So but when you achieve the form realm, when you achieve the jhanas, then you discard that. So it's discard of meditation. That's why it's said it's included within the discards of meditation. But that is included within the form realm there. And then also the consciousness that is compatible with stainless Dharma knowing. In other words, the truth of the path. This means that after you have seen the truth and you are meditating, you have that wisdom that sees the path. That's what we mean here. That's stainless or undefiled. So those are the 5 that can see those 3 categories of the desire realm. Then which cognitions focus on those of the level of form? So we've got those 3 categories of the discards of seeing suffering, the discards of seeing the origin, the discards of seeing meditation in the level of desire. Well, is it the same in the level of form? The answer it is, and those of form are in their own 3 low, 1 high, and stainless 2. This is another one of Vasubandhu's verses that when you first read it makes no sense. When you understand the meaning, it helps a lot. So those of desire, so those 3, the seeing, discards of seeing, suffering and caused, and discards of meditation on the form realm, are in their own. So like in desire, they're also objects of discards of seeing, of cognitions that are discards of seeing, suffering and origin, and cognitions that are discards of meditation. So you've got those 3. Then also the 3 lower. That means the 2 universals of dissimilar status and the virtuous discards of meditation. In other words, when you have you remember we had the universal kernels, the personality views and doubts and so forth. Those can look up at the form realm, so they also can view it. And the virtuous discards of meditation. And so those 2 universals of dissimilar status, some of them are discards of seeing, and some of them are discards of seeing meditation, or origin, excuse me. And so therefore they can see the form realm. And the virtuous discards of meditation, that would be like that level of preparation for the form realm we've been through. And then 1 cognition from the preparation for infinite space from the higher formless. So what this means is that when you have gone through all of your meditation in the jhanas, and you go through the first and second and third, and you've reached the 4th jhana, when you want to then go to the first level of the formless, which is called infinite space, when you're on the preparations for infinite space, then you can look down and look back at at all of the different at the form realm and see all that, see all of the discards there. So we can view those also. And then the consciousness that is compatible with the stainless subsequent knowing too. So this would be the consciousness of the truth of the path that looks at the form and formless realm. Subsequent knowing means looking at the higher realms. The path when you're looking at the higher realms. Dharma knowing, which is in the previous one, means looking at the realm of desire. Subsequent knowing means looking at the realm of, at the higher realms. And the reason for that will come up in the 6th chapter. I'm going through this kind of quickly because this is one of those topics that I need to cover because it's in the book, but it's not the, but it's not the most important for you right now. It's important, but not the most important. We'll get to more important things. And then which cognitions focus on those of the levels of formless? Those of formless in the sphere of these 3 realms, of 3 realms of stainless. So it's the same. You've got the 3 discards of seeing, the same 3 classes of dharmas in the formless. That is the classes of discards of seeing suffering, discards of seeing, origin, and the discards of meditation. They're the focus of 10 cognitions. So those are the objects in the formless realm, right? And you have the 10 cognitions. So those same 3 classes of cognitions of the 3 realms are non-cognitions. In other words, you've got the universals on the that are discards of seeing, path, and origin in the 3 realms that can focus on the 3 classes in the formless, and also the discards of meditation, plus, and you can do that in all 3 realms, plus the sphere of stainless cognition, the truth of the path that looks at the formless realm. So that is 10. So 3 of 3 realms plus, that's 9 plus 1 makes 10. So then when you have so that's those 3 classes, but we've got 2 classes. excuse me, we've got two classes that are left, the classes of seeing, cessation, and path. So discards of, so objects, external objects that are discards of seeing, cessation, and the path, which cognitions can view those? So here it says discards of seeing, path, and cessation are in the same spheres plus their own. So the dharmas of the three realms that are discards of seeing, path, and cessation are in the same sphere of all the previous minds. So when you have the, like if you have a discard of seeing the path, this is like a misunderstanding of the path on desire realm. So the desire realm discard of seeing the path, a misunderstanding of what the path is. Like the view that discipline and austerity is the path. That is observed by the same ones in the desire realm that we talked about, the discards of seeing, suffering, and origin, plus the discards of meditation. And it's also observed by the path. When you're talking about the discards of cessation, like you have a misunderstanding of cessation, that would be like a wrong view about cessation. That would be like, such as the wrong view of denying cessation, that is a discard of seeing cessation. That would be discarded by, or that could be viewed by the discards of seeing, suffering, and origin, as well as by the discards of meditation, cognitions that are discards of meditation. So it's the same three plus their own. So if it's a truth of cessation, then it can be viewed by by suffering, origin, and meditation plus cessation. If it's a discard of seeing path, then it's the same. Then it's similar. It can be viewed by the discards of seeing, suffering, and origin, and of meditation plus the discards of path. So that is the same, and it's a similar on the form and form realms. You basically just add one, the one of their own class. So then the question is, which cognitions focus on the undefiled? Because we have that 16th category, right? If we go back to our list of these here, we've got this 16th category of the undefiled. So what is it that can look at the undefiled? So to go back to the text here, the undefiled are in the sphere of the three realms last three and the stainless. So the undefiled are in the sphere of each of the three realms last three of the five classes of discards. So let's go back and if we take a look at the at this page here, we see that we've in desire, right? We've got five discards: seeing suffering, seeing origin, seeing cessation, seeing path, and meditation. So the last three are what? Seeing cessation, seeing path, and seeing meditation, right? So those last three, they can focus on the discards of seeing, on the discards of they can focus on the undefiled cognitions. It's like when you have a discard of seeing cessation, what is it doing? It's viewing the undefiled phenomena, which is cessation. And maybe you have a wrong view about it, or maybe you have doubt about it, or something like that. And so that is focusing on cessation in some way. Maybe erroneously, maybe it's a mistaken of it, but it's focusing on that, right? So those cognitions are in those three classes. The cognitions that can focus that are in those three classes in all three realms. So to go back here to the book, so the undefiled are in the sphere of each of the three realms last three of the five classes of discards. They're in the sphere of direct mistaken engagements of cessation and path. So those are the discards of seeing, cessation, and path that directly view the cessation and path, not those that kind of look at a misconception of it. I think I misspoke or I said something incorrect a few moments ago. They're the ones that look directly at it. For example, desire and anger that focus on the path or on cessation would be a direct mistake and discard. They'd be a what? They would be a direct mistaken engagement of the truth of cessations and path, right? And also the virtuous discards of meditation, and also the stainless undefiled cognition. So the virtuous discards of meditation, that would include like the preparations for the higher level. And the stainless, undefiled cognition would be either would be the truth of the path of each of the realms. So that is how the undefiled goes. So thus there, the sphere of 10 cognitions. So the three, the discards of seeing, cessation, path, and the discards of meditation in 3 realms. 3 times 3 is 9, plus undefiled for 10. Okay, so that's the end of that topic. And now we've come to the classifications of what has the kernels. So which cognitions have the kernels? So we can talk about afflicted cognitions having kernels, right? So the question here is, as it says in the commentary, if the 15 dharmas and cognitions are put forth as defiled, do they have kernels only through the development of the kernels, you ask? So is it only because, do you only do those dharmas, like they kind of like that chocolate oblivion truffle tort, there are kernels that go through it. Is that go through it? Is that only when the kernels develop? Is a question. So there are, what it says here actually is instead that there are 2 ways the afflicted can have kernels, and the unafflicted through development. The 2 ways that afflicted phenomena can have kernels are by either focus or by development. But the unafflicted dharmas can only have them through development. So as it says in the commentary, first of all, it is presented that there are 2 ways or reasons by which the afflicted current cognitions can have kernels. So when their companions, the kernels, have not been abandoned. In other words, you've got a cognition. That's like you've just got consciousness, and it's associated with mental factors. And when one of those mental factors is, say, desire. When that desire hasn't been abandoned, the kernels develop in them, and so they're presented as having the kernels. Okay, so that's one way, and that's the most common way, that you have that cognition, you have the desire, you have the object. So the cognition is afflicted, and it has that afflicted kernel, and then that kernel sees the object, the chocolate oblivion truffle tort, and develops, and you feel manifest desire. The kernels, so that's when you haven't abandoned the kernels. Now, when you have abandoned the kernels, how is it? The kernels that have been abandoned do not develop in, but do coexist with afflicted minds. This is like when you were talking yesterday about you've abandoned the kernel, but you aren't totally rid of it. So it can develop through, that afflicted cognition can have the kernel in terms of being associated with it, but it's presented as having the kernel. And here we're primarily talking about past when you're talking about abandon. So because the question is, as it says here, if the kernels have been abandoned, how can they coexist with an afflicted mind? Like you've got your Arhat, Shariputra. He's the one we always use as the example. Shariputra has abandoned all of the 98 discards. He's an Arhat. So how can his kernels exist with that mind? So when abandoning the discards, they're not separated from the afflicted mind and then discarded. Instead, they're abandoned together with it. And actually what this means, it says this merely makes it so they will not arise in the future, so they still coexist in the period of the past. It is said, because this is again something, one of those things that the Great Exposition is talking about, the past phenomena having substantial existence. That means like being really real. And so this is what is said. And so that's why it says here, it is said. This is again with that kind of critical word, for critical phrase from Vasubandhu. He doesn't quite buy it. So all defilements of the unafflicted mind, such as defiled virtues, are presented having them through the kernels, through the development of the kernels, through focus. So you have unafflicted minds, and that's defiled virtue. So what is defiled virtue? It means like the virtue that an ordinary sentient being does. When we are generous or practice discipline or practice meditation or whatever we do to gather merit, because we're ordinary individuals, we still have kernels, like view of self at the very least, right? And so those kernels, those conditions have those kernels through the development of the kernels through the focus. So you're being generous, and at the same time, you're kind of looking at me, I'm being generous. That's the development, right? So those parts here. So now we've come to what I think is, we're getting to the interesting stuff this morning. We've been through the complicated stuff. Now we're getting to the interesting points. How do the kernels arise? So here there are 2 points. The first is the order in which they arise. And so here it says, out of delusion, doubt, from that wrong view, then personality. So first, well, I want to get all this stuff on one page. Can I do it? Oh, yes. Here we are. Out of delusion, doubt, from that wrong view, then personality. From that extreme, that means extreme view, then overesteeming discipline, overesteeming view. For one's own view, there's pride, attachment, and hate for others in this order. So first you have delusion. You just don't know, you don't recognize the truth. Because you don't recognize the truth, you're kind of deluded, then you get doubt. So at first you think, oh, you have no idea, like this word is, it's like, look at the world and you think, is this world pleasurable or is it suffering? I don't know. I can't tell. And then you get the wrong view. Hey, this world is pleasurable. You can think this while you are young and healthy and when nothing's going wrong. This world is pleasure. That's a wrong view, right? Denying the truth of suffering. And then from that, you get the idea of personality. Well, what is this? It's like me, it's enjoying that. So the personality view, as it says in the auto commentary, then engages that wrong view. So it says, well, the 5 aggregates that by their nature are suffering, but we're seeing them as pleasure, and that we grasp them as being a self. We think they're a whole self. So that's the personality view. Then from that, there's the extreme view of thinking, well, that self, it's either we think that I'm going to be permanent. I have this soul that's going to last forever. I have this Atman or whatever that's going to last forever. Or we think that it's going to be end, and it's like, I might as well enjoy everything now. And then from that, you get wrong language. From that, you get from that extreme view, then you get the overesteeming discipline, thinking that keeping your discipline is like the best way to achieve the high realms or whatever. And then when you do that, you overesteem the view, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this view is great. My religion is best. Buddhism is best. If you're thinking Buddhism is best, you probably got this problem of overestimating the view. And for your own view, if you're misunderstanding Buddhism. And then because of that, you think your view is too great, you've pride for your own view. And then you are attached to your own view. And then when you're attached to your own view, you then have hatred or aversion for others. And out of the excess of attachment, you have hatred for others. So this is the order. So as it says in the commentary, first out of total delusion about the truths, comes doubt. Is it so or is it not? And then from that, or hearing or contemplating wrongly, so someone teaches you and they teach you something that's not the truth, you have wrong view. And from that denial of the selfless nature of the aggregates comes the view of personality. From that comes holding the extreme of oneself as permanent or ceasing, thinking yourself as being eternal, an eternal soul, or as being ending at the end of death. So when you have the extreme view, particularly the one of the view of permanence, comes the belief in the purifying power of discipline and austerities. If I flagellate myself long enough, I'll get to heaven. If I sit in the middle of 5 fires, I'll sweat out all my misdeeds. And so that's overesteeming the discipline. Then from that comes overesteeming the view. Overesteeming that inferior view itself. Next, for one's own view, there is pride and attachment that arise. So you're proud of your view. I'm happy to be whatever I am. I'm proud of this. And then you're attached to that. And when you're too attached to your own view, what happens is that you have hate for others. We can easily see this when people get so attached to their own religion that they then hate others. I'm this sect. They're that sect. We're going to get in a fight. And we see this in all religions. Actually, within all religions, I think that the biggest fights are the intersectarian fights, the closer they are. You even think about the Christians and the Christians. You had the Protestants and Catholics who fought wars for hundreds of years all over Europe. And you've got the Islam, you've got the conflicts between Sunni and Shia, and within Tibet, we don't even want to get there. The conflicts between the Jikung and the Sakya, the Gelug, and everyone else, and it's like just too many conflicts within. from over-attachment to your own view, hate for the others. So they thus arise in this order, out of misconceptions of the view. So now we get to the most important part this morning. So what are the causes? I should go over this, sorry, shouldn't just skip over it. This last phrase here, the causes of their arising. So here, this is important. What causes the afflictions? What causes the afflictions to arise? How does it happen? And this is what's really practically important for us right now. Because we have the kernels, but the thing about kernels is they're really subtle, so you don't see them all the time. When you are feeling faith, you still have the kernels for anger, but you don't feel it. You're probably not even looking for it. You may be looking for it, I don't know, but it's hard to see. We ordinary people have trouble seeing them in ourselves. Sometimes we think to ourselves, well, I've pretty well suppressed that problem. I don't have much desire anymore. I don't have much anger anymore. I'm going pretty well. And then it all of a sudden comes up. So what makes the afflictions arise? The kernels being not abandoned, the object being present near, and inappropriate attention fulfill the causes of the afflictions. So we've got three principal causes that produce the afflictions, as it says in the first sentence of the commentary. The first is the kernels being not abandoned. So there are kind of two aspects here. In the commentary, it says the kernels being not abandoned. So you haven't abandoned the kernels. This means that you haven't severed the attainment of the origin of the kernels. Then they have not been abandoned. Remember, in the Great Exposition School, especially those of you who have studied the second chapter, we have the attainments. I mentioned the other day too. So when you have anger, you also have actually, let's do desire. That's the one that's given in the auto commentary, so I better use that as the example. You have desire. At the same time, you have the attainment of desire. And so in the Great Exposition School, what happens when you abandon something is that you eliminate the attainment for it. That is the process of abandonment. When we no longer have the attainment, which is a separate phenomena from the desire itself, according to the Great Exposition, then you no longer have it. Now, at the same time, what is described in the auto commentary and in Yashometra is at the same time as you have the other factors, that you also have to have the complete knowing of the full knowledge, the full knowing of it. In other words, you have to have the wisdom of the path. The wisdom. So when you have that wisdom of the path, the wisdom of the path can't coexist with the affliction. So the attainment of the affliction is abandoned. So the kernels being not abandoned. To put it in the most simple terms, this means that you haven't got to that level of the path where you would be able to, or where you have abandoned that. So, for example, with desire, you haven't got with the desire for things of the desire realm. So this can be either food or attractive people primarily, because the primary desire in the desire realm is for food and sex. So you have the attractive person. So as long as you are still attached to the desire realm, then there is the danger that, or there is one of the causes of the afflictions arising. So that's the first one. Right? So you have, because you still have the kernel of desire, there's the object of desire. So that's the second thing. The object that is compatible with the arising of the afflictions being present near. Now here I'm going to criticize my own translation. This is way too literal. It really should just say the object being proximate, which is a slightly higher level of language. It means that the object is nearby. Okay? The object is nearby. In other words, you can like if you have that desirable person, the attractive person, that attractive person is nearby and you can somehow apprehend them. So that's the second thing, that you have to have an object. So you have your desire, you have the kernel of desire, and you have the object of desire. Now, just because you have the kernel of the desire and you have the object of the desire, does that mean that the afflictions are going to necessarily arise? It doesn't. You also have to have the third thing, inappropriate attention, or maybe it'd be better to say inappropriate engagement. In other words, knowing it incorrectly, by the immediate condition of being mistaken about the appearance of the object or inappropriate intention. So for example, you have the attractive person. You've got that's the object that is proximate, right? The object being present near, the object being proximate. You have the kernel, you've got that kernel of desire within you. And then you also have the inappropriate engagement or intention where you are thinking that that person would give you pleasure. You've got those three things. So when you have those three things, then manifest desire can occur. So in order for a manifest desire, you have to have it's kind of by the power of three things. It's being the power of the cause, which is the kernel itself, the power of the object, which is the attractive person, and then the power of the cause. What is it called in the what does Yashumitra call it? I was just looking at this. The power, and anyway, it's the power of the immediate condition. Yes, it's the power of the immediate condition, which is here the viewing it inappropriately. So when we're talking about this immediate condition, what we're talking about is in the moment prior to the desire arises, because it's the one that happens. So you've got, so first there are these three things, and then three things come together in one moment, and then the next moment you have desire. Okay, so these produce the afflictions. So these three are the power of cause, effect, and training. Oh, sorry, that's right. And training. It could also be, actually, probably training is not quite right. It's the power of action or engagement. And so this is the power of the mistaken, of the inappropriate engagement. So this is in general. But according to the Great Exposition School, they don't all necessarily have to be fulfilled, because from the power of the object alone that arhats can regress, it is heard. So what this means is that according to the Great Exposition School, there are times when arhats kind of regress temporarily from their state of being an arhat. Just for a short period of time, their mindfulness gets a little bit weak. And so then they're kind of a little bit prey. This is for the lesser types of arhats. It's not for like a Buddha, it's for like the lesser types of arhats. And so they can regress temporarily. But because they're arhats already, they will restore themselves to that result before they go away, before they pass away to non-abiding nirvana. Excuse me, not non-abiding, to nirvana with no remainder. So this is what we mean by arhats regressing. They temporarily, their mindfulness they get distracted temporarily, and that can happen because of the object. So it is heard, Vasubandhu says, this is the skeptical word. The Sutra school is skeptical of this. It says that arhats cannot regress from abandonment. And so here we are. So those are the causes of the kernels. And so this is something that I think it's really important for us to think about, because, you know, we can look at it. You've got we are ordinary individuals, and we're living lives. Most of us are not hermits. I mean, even as a monk, I'm not a hermit. And probably if you've got an internet connection, it's difficult to be a hermit. So we're leading lives, we're interacting with people, we're interacting with things, and the afflictions can develop. So what is it that we have to be careful of? And so the first is the kernels not being abandoned. Well, we're ordinary individuals at this point. We need to do whatever we can to go progress along the path to abandon the afflictions, but that's going to take time. It's just, I mean, frankly, it's just going to take time. We have to follow the instructions of our teachers, and there are going to be different instructions because than are taught in this book, because of the way the Tibetan tradition works. But we will be able to abandon the afflictions eventually. So the kernels are present, and when we go out, many of you have to go to work. Even if you don't have to go to work, you have to do various things. You will come into contact with people and things that you either feel desire or anger or doubt or delusion or whichever. You're going to come into contact with objects that will provoke primarily anger or desire, the ones that we primarily worry about. So we've got that third one, the inappropriate attention, and that's the hard one. So when we're actually looking at ourselves and we're looking at how do we do this, I think this is the one that we have to be careful with. This is why, like in the way of the Bodhisattva, it said that the that the chapter on carefulness, or the practice of being careful, is like the basis of the Bodhisattva practice. I think for all of our Buddhist practice, when we are going out and actually engaging in things, we've got the three causes of the afflictions. Two of them, we don't have control on the temporary level. Unless you want to go off and really devote yourself to meditation, and even then it's still going to take a long time, you're going to have problems with the first one. The object being present near, if you go off into retreat, you're still going to have things you desire. So it's the inappropriate attention that we have to work on at first. And that means that we really have to figure out how to interrupt that cycle of viewing desirable things as sources of pleasure, viewing unpleasant things as sources of problems and feeling aversion for them. How do we do that? And this is where it's so important for us to really focus on the thoughts that turn the mind, the thoughts of our precious human birth, of the thoughts of the impermanence of this situation, of death and impermanence, the thoughts of the sufferings of samsara, and the truth of karmic cause and effect. The more we think about those, then just that contemplation itself is going to do a lot to decrease the inappropriate attention, or to help us notice it when it occurs, that we don't then follow through on it and have an actual give in to the afflictions. That's the point. So it's really important for us to actually do these meditations. They're not the most popular meditations, but they're among the more beneficial ones that we could actually do. I mean, we all want to do Mahamudra and Dzogchen or whatever high practices, but really when you think about what is going to be most beneficial for us, probably not that. Probably what's going to be most beneficial for us is really taking the suffering of samsara to heart. When you take the suffering of samsara to heart, and then you develop the wish for freedom, the more you do that, the less attraction you have to pleasant objects. And the less attraction you have to pleasant objects, then the less aversion you're going to have, because you don't care about them. So that's, this is, I think, the important point of this. We can look at this and say, what are the causes? When I get angry, what are the causes? When I feel desire, what are the causes? When I feel ignorance, when I feel delusion, what are the causes? Looking at them and then seeing what you can do to interrupt it. At the moment that it's arising, you have to be mindful and aware. That means you have to value it, which means you have to be careful. That carefulness comes from really contemplating the sufferings of samsara and the incredible but transient opportunity we have now to do something about it. Okay. So that's the causes of the causes of the afflictions. In other words, how do we go from a kernel to a manifest affliction? So now the next topic we have is one called enumerations of the kernels. And this has three topics: the actual enumeration, what the kernels are concurrent with, and teaching the 5 obscurations. So we're going to talk about the actual enumeration first today. I don't know if we'll get to the whole thing. We'll do through a bit of it. There has 2 topics: the points from the sutras and the points from the treatises. The points from the sutras has 2 topics: the actual and then explaining the terms. In other words, we're going to talk about how the sutras talk about these, and then explaining the names, why they're given these names. And so the actual has 3 topics: the defilements, the floods and yokes, and grasping. So there are actually 4 categories here. So before we go through those 4 categories, I want to again go back and show you something else. We'll go back to this thing, and now I'll show you this thing. So we've got the 16, we don't need to worry about the 16 categories of phenomena. I'll just take a moment to go through these. Okay, so that's done. Now we go to the enumeration of the kernels according to the sutras. Okay, so what are the types of kernels taught in the sutras? There are the 3 types of defilements, 4 types of floods, the 4 types of yokes, and the 4 types of grasping. In other words, when the Buddha was teaching, going around, traveling, walking all over North India, teaching sermons here or there, he talked about 3 different types of defilements, 4 different types of floods, 4 different types of yokes, and 4 types of grasping. So what are these? Now, I'm giving you the names now because actually if you know the names ahead of time, then going and looking at them again, then going through the commentary makes a bit more sense. So the 3 types of defilements are these: They're the defilements of desire. That means the defilements of the desire realm. Defilements of existence, those are the defilements of the two higher realms, and the defilements of ignorance. So all the ignorance is put separately as one defilement. So those are the three types of defilements. When we talk about like defiled and undefiled dharmas, that's using kind of the same word, right? Sakpa in Tibetan or Ashrava in Sanskrit. Then we've got four types of floods. The floods of desire, the floods of existence, the floods of views, and the floods of ignorance. So these are four types. The floods of desire, again, in the desire realm. Floods of existence are in the higher realm. And then we've got the views. They're also considered floods in ignorance. So floods are like, you know how a flood comes by and carries everything away? These, actually, in the current time, there are terrible floods happening in Nepal. In areas where many of our monks come from, and through roads that they're traveling down. And we were watching at breakfast, we're watching videos of these huge torrents of muddy water flowing down and carrying away houses, actually carrying away a post office in one place, you know. So what is the flood? The flood's like, they carry you away, and once you're carried away by the flood, there's like no choice. And we've got the four types of yokes. You know, the yoke is what, like when you have oxen that are hooked to a plow, they wear a yoke that hooks them to the plow. So they're yoked to the plow, for example. So similar. Oh, I didn't change the words here. It's the same as the four types of floods, except I should have changed the names. They should be the yokes of desire, the yokes of existence, the yokes of views, and the yokes of ignorance. The same four categories. They're just called yokes instead of floods. And my display here is incorrect. My apologies. And then finally, there are four types of grasping. These four types of grasping are the grasping of desire, the grasping of belief in a self, grasping of view, and the grasping of discipline and view. So these, discipline and austerity. So these are the four types of grasping. Oh, where do I go here? How do I get out of this? Oops, sorry. I'm on the wrong one. Trying to exit this. There we go. So now all my screen is getting messed up. So back here, so stopping share. There we are. So those are what we have here. So to technical things distracting me. Okay, so let's go back to the book. So now that we've been through those 16 types of categories. So first are the defilements. So we have defilements. We have the defilements of desire, the defilements of existence, and defilements of ignorance. These three types of defilements. And so here it says, in desire, defilements are the afflictions except delusion and the entanglers. Entanglers are like there are a certain set of, mainly of the near afflictions that actually get you going and get you really wrapped up in an action. So once you feel desire, then you have like your lack of a conscience, your brazenness, and all sorts of other qualities that, because of near afflictions that then actually get you to motivate and do the bad action. So those are the entanglers. They entangle you in bad actions. So in the desire realm, the defilements are the afflictions except for the 5 delusions. So remember, we had the 36 afflictions of the desire realm. So that would mean the 12 views, the 4 doubts, and 5 each of desire, anger, delusion, fire, anger, and pride, for a total of 31. Plus the 10 entanglers of shamelessness and so forth that will be explained below. So that we'll talk about those in a day or two. So those are the defilements of desire. So let me just get that all on one page if I can. Yes, so in desire realm, we have so to go over again, we have the 12 views, the 4 doubts, and 5 each of desire, anger, and pride, but not the delusion. Delusion or ignorance is considered a separate defilement, okay? So desire is that. Then identifying the defilements of existence, this has 2 points, identifying the character base, or identifying the category or instance. So it's in form or formless, kernels alone are the defilements of existence. So in the form and the formless realms, excluding ignorance, there are the 12 views, 4 doubts, 5 desires, and 5 prides for 26 that function in form, right? And so in the form realm, we had a total of 31 kernels. So that means if you take out the 5 ignorance, that leaves you with 26. And so here's the 12 views, 4 doubts, etc. Does make up the 26. And the same 26 that function in desire. So these 52 kernels alone are the defilement of existence. So alone says not ignorance, just these ones, not ignorance. So those are the defilements of form and formless. We had the defilements of desire. These are basically saying that you take all the afflictions, you take the afflictions of the desire realm, except for a delusion. That's defilements of desire. Defilements of existence are all the kernels of form and formless except for delusion. That's kind of an easier way of thinking about it. But these two, the defilements for the higher realms, they're called the defilements of existence. So why are they called the defilements of existence and not called defilements of the higher realms? So the reason that the 2 higher realms are defilements of existence is, since they are neutral and look inward on levels of equipoise, they are one. So since they, that is the kernel of both the higher realms, are neutral, that is, they're as you remember, defilements or the kernels can be either neutral or unvirtuous. So here they're all neutral on the higher realms. And since they look inward, since they do not primarily act on an object, but engage mainly by looking inward. In other words, in the formless realm, you're not looking externally at an object. So it's different. In the desire realm, you can look outside and see a beautiful person, or you can see a chocolate oblivion truffle torte, or whatever, and engage it outside. In the form and formless realm, that's not how the afflictions work. They look inwards at an idea of a self. And since they're on the levels of equipoise, that is, they're in meditation, for those 3 comparable reasons, they are combined into one and called the defilements of existence. So that's what we're saying. So that's why they're separate. And because they're similar in that respect, they're made one category. This is similar to, remember at the beginning when we talked about the kernels as being 6 or as being 7, we divided desire into 2. We had desire of desire and the desire of existence. It's the same here. Basically, we're saying the defilements of desire and the defilements of existence is similar thing. Now, there's a reason. So, but here we have the third category is the defilements of ignorance. So why is ignorance taught as a different defilement? Why is it taught separately? And the reason is the root is ignorance, so it is taught as a separate defilement. So the root of the defilements of desire and so forth and of samsara is ignorance. So it's the basis. And because it's the basis of samsara and existence and everything, and all of the other afflictions, it is especially harmful. So it is separated out as made it made its own category. So for that reason, the 15 types of ignorance of the 3 realms are taught together as a separate defilement or a separate category of defilements. The 15 types of ignorance are what? How do we get 15 types of ignorance? Well, you've got the discards of seeing and the discards of meditation. The discards of seeing, you've got the 4 classes each. So that's 5 for desire realm and 5 for the form and 5 for the formless. That means 15, right? So that's how we go. So I think that this is a good spot to leave this for right now. And we will we'll pick up from the floods and the yokes tomorrow. So at this point, we have a few minutes if anyone has any questions. I haven't received any questions over email this morning from the people who have watched over YouTube, but to remind those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can send an email to office@trangumonastery.org, and I will do my best to try to answer your questions. So if any of the Zoom audience now has any questions. It doesn't look like anyone does today. Maybe that first bit about the objects of the 16 objects and all that was just too much. This is the problem with Abhidharma. You have these topics that are like really like overwhelming, and then you've got these ones that are really practical. So right now, actually, when you're thinking about what to think about today, the most important section is that one on the causes of the afflictions. That's the one that's best for you to, if you to really think about that one, and that's one that you can really think about your own experience and look at how your own mind works. So if there are no questions, then we will move on to our chants, to closing chants. So please, let's please recite these chants, thinking to yourself that we must dedicate the merit of our teaching and listening to the Dharma so that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who and great masters of whatever gender who teach the Dharma may all live long, that they may have no obstacles in their teaching, and that they may reach all sentient beings in any realm. Dedicate this merit so that we all become capable of actually helping them reach all those beings, so capable of serving them. Let's dedicate this merit so that all those sentient beings achieve the freedom from suffering, the complete freedom of suffering of Buddhahood, and that until they do, that they're all born in the higher realms, meet spiritual friends who can guide them down the path and encounter no obstacles. And in this way, thinking this way, please, let's dedicate the merit. O sanam de tam je se pani tobne nye peranam pam chete Gegana chi balong trumbai sibe toledro kunyoro sho. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing and free all beings swiftly from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Chancho semcho rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyurchi ke pa nyamba me paryang gonne gondu pelwar sho. Okay, so thank you very much, and we will resume tomorrow, same time, same whatever, same medium. So thank you.